I'm stoked you're here, dude. I'm
Yeah.
very stoked you're here. Thanks.
I'm excited you asked me to be here, dude. This is awesome.
Awesome. Well, it was kind of a accumulation of things, right? Like we had talked about it briefly a while ago. You're like, yeah, when I have something to say, we'll chop it up. And like after showing up to your seminar and hearing the way you speak about the information, a very unique way and charismatic way of delivering what some might see as bland information, especially when it's a lot of numbers, percentages, and it's very terrifying. It's really, really cool that that's a way you're able to do things and a way you're able to convey information. So I was like, yeah, this will be really fun. I think it'll be a good episode, brother. So I appreciate you doing this, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if it's showing up yet, but you're making me blush a little bit, dude.
I
appreciate it. I mean, just
for sure.
Expand a little bit on what you're talking about. I mean, I myself, growing up in school, I had a pretty narrow attention span. To the point where I was in detention a lot.
A lot, eh?
Yeah. They even sent me in for testing as a kid. They're like, okay, this guy is like super sporadic, right? I mean, never confirmed, but I think ADHD might be a little bit at play. Yeah. So anyway, drawing on that experience, for myself, I just needed to be engaged, right? Yeah. And I think especially with, talking to, common people about very complex topics, you want to keep them engaged because there is value, right? There's value in learning things that you might not even know exist yet.
Oh, for sure.
And they often say when you're doing a presentation, really what matters is the start and the end. But, my approach is keep them engaged throughout.
Yeah, do what you can.
Get the gears turning, right?
Yeah, for sure. Do you take us through kind of your journey leaving high school time to where we are now, and we can then go back through it with a bit more of a fine-tooth comb?
No, definitely. So, for what it's worth, I skipped a grade at a young age, so I was kind of, I guess ahead of the game for a bit. Now, my mom always told me, don't use this as an excuse, right? Like, you're given an opportunity to be a year ahead, so you got to take full advantage, right?
Love it, yeah.
So, throughout school, did really well, and then, I graduated and went to Laurentian for biochemistry. I wanted to be a professor. I wanted to be a teacher. I was really good at public speaking, and all throughout high school I was put on numerous stages, just talking to people. And I was like, you know what? I can do this in front of a classroom. I can teach people and teach them complex subjects like science, for sure. Right? Now, me learning science was the problem. I did about a semester and then said, you know what? Time to take us in a different direction. So, I got a job at the beer store when I turned 18 through a friend of mine, and I was sometimes going to school, and
that's how it goes,
right? And I started to learn. Okay, like the more I engaged with people, like it's gonna sound so silly, but like when people would come into the beer store, right? They walk in and they say, well, I want to get 24 bottles or whatever, right? And say, oh, if you bought like 2 15-packs instead, it's a better deal per bottle, right? And they'd be like, oh, really? Like, that's super helpful, right? So that's when I started to learn that, okay, I think where my skill set lies is, engaging with people. I wasn't just like, hey, how are you, right? When people came in, I would learn people's names. I would, just start to recognize, right? Yeah. And then, so that's when I learned, okay, I need to get into at least business and or marketing, right? Which is when I changed it up in university. So it was only a semester in. I felt really bad about it, but then I was told, I was like, you know what? If I'm going to make the change, I might as well do it now instead of, enduring, right?
That's a good way to look at it, for sure.
So about 3 years in to university, graduate high school in 2017. So a few years in was when COVID obviously struck. And then we switched to online, and I didn't really have a problem with the online learning as much.
Oh, no kidding.
It was actually a bit easier for me because it was just modules, so I didn't have to actually go to class anymore.
Yeah.
So I didn't mind, right, for someone who has engagement issues, right? Like,
but what was the thing, too, because that makes me think, dude, was it not so much like the issue of actually disciplining to go to school, like to classes, but was it just you knew that it'd be a lot harder to digest the material in class?
I think a bit of both. I found myself getting really distracted, right? Especially when I show up with my laptop, that I had installed Pokemon on, I would be engaged for 10 minutes and then Pokemon for the rest, right?
Let's go.
And as I've grown, I've also learned I just like to move at my own speed, right? Sometimes I'm just in grind mode and I can, do a 14-hour day and just stay locked in, and other days I'm just totally like, you know what, I can't do anything today, right? So I didn't mind the online transition, and then the next step was, my mom was a established property manager in town, and she said to me, like, look, you're working part time at the beer store right now.
Yeah.
Why don't you come work part time as my assistant? Right?
Amazing, yeah.
Pick up some like real business skills. So for me, who was actually interning with Cliff Skeletor at Launchpad
Yeah,
Creative
my
at
dog.
the time,
Love
right?
Cliff. He's
Love him, man.
somewhere on here.
He, you know what? I gotta owe a lot of things to Cliff right now.
Yeah,
I
dude's
wouldn't
a
be
man.
where I'm at if it wasn't for some opportunities
Yeah.
that he gave me through
He's
a
the best.
random internship.
Dude, that's awesome, man.
You know?
Shout out to him for sure. I love him.
Also, big thing, like,
Yeah.
if you are struggling to figure out what you want to do,
Yeah.
an internship is like
Huge.
It's massive.
Yeah.
A lot of people will take free help.
Mhm.
Right? Even if they don't have something for you, even just for you to show up and just sit there
Oh, dude.
and
yeah.
learn about whatever thing you might find somewhat interesting, right? And the time commitment is not a lot. A lot of people think an internship's just a job for free.
70 hours for... No.
I was in Launchpad for like maybe 3 hours a week, and from that experience, I connected with my team leader now at the real estate place that I'm at. I connected with one of my closest friends through that, and I've had numerous experiences just from being engaged and being involved there.
Oh,
and
that's incredible.
Changed my entire perspective on my whole life track.
Right.
So I started working for my mom. I was doing some interning with Cliff, and then my mind shifted, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to get into marketing. Maybe I need to get into entrepreneurship, right? So I dropped out of school. Against everyone around me's wishes. They were like, you need to finish
Everybody,
it. You're almost there. One more semester and I would have had a degree.
Yeah,
And
I see what they're saying.
I was like, you know what? Opportunity cost, right? I was like,
Yeah.
I'm going to do another semester and have a degree that's not going to, benefit me in any way, shape, or form in this industry.
Yeah, or just
right?
fast track what you're...
Or just get
started.
Get
now.
ahead. Exactly.
For sure.
Right? And to this day,
That's a better choice.
I look back and I say, you know what? I should have started sooner.
Yeah, no regrets for sure.
Right? I should have started. That's the only regret, is that I should have started it sooner. You know?
I see you.
So with so I went on with my mom, and then got my real estate license under her. Then was doing property management and real estate, and then now I'm just full-time real estate.
So let's back up. Where do you think your ability kind of because you said in high school you're always doing speaking and like your engagements and stuff like that, where you always just found yourself in front of people, right? Audiences, big, small, medium, you name it. Where did that stem from growing up, you think?
Well, my mom is definitely not a soft-spoken person.
Fair.
In fact, I've never seen it myself, but she told me that she used to be very similar and didn't have a problem getting up in front of people.
Oh, amazing.
And speaking,
Just never had the fear.
Yeah, and
cool.
like it's the same for me. I was, I obviously don't remember, but when I was a toddler, I was just a talker. I would run around and just talk to everybody on the street, right?
That was cool.
And then growing up, I went to a really small school, a lot of shy kids, and anytime there was anything having to do with speaking, basically all eyes were on me.
Oh, okay.
So from like the earliest I can remember, from speaking in front of the school at school or events or public events, or we used to do a fair, and there would be radio commercials, and so at like age 12 I'd be going into the studio and doing like radio commercials for the school.
No way.
So it's just I've always done it.
That's crazy, dude. It's incredible to me to think of how that developed and to see where you are like now, because you're younger than I am. When you're like graduating in 17, I was like, oh, he's like 3 years younger. This is crazy. So I'm like, you're like mid 20s. So to see that and know that, okay, 10 years from now, how crazy that like skill is going to be developed is, man, it's empowering to know. And then to see how it was developed is like, oh, that's cool. Kind of get started early and have no pressure, and just everybody's kind of, hey, you can do this, you can be great, right? And everybody, I imagine, was supportive too.
Oh, absolutely, right?
In that time, yeah.
Everyone around you is just like, how do you do that? Like, that's amazing, right? And and especially when people prop you up like that and they look at you and know that you're the guy, right? It just makes you that much more confident.
Oh yeah,
and now
I can imagine.
It's to the point where who needs something said, read, spoken, whatever, right?
Read out
like
loud,
any sort of like this, right? I'm not in front of people, but
indirectly,
it's second to know, like I'm not thinking about like, oh man, I wonder if what people are going to think when they listen to this.
No.
It just comes off natural.
Which is crazy because I know I've had a couple people on, especially in the beginning days. I was, and I'm sure you've heard of this term, but like paralysis by analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So like I ask a simple question, they're like over analyzing. So then watching it back, there's like a 3-second delay of like you can see the gears spinning.
Interesting.
And they're like worried about how to. You have like the opposite of that. You're like, no man, I'm good.
Yeah, well,
Don't overthink nothing.
It's almost like a muscle too, right?
Yeah.
Like you just learn, whatever comes off natural is what people are going to appreciate the most, right? Especially in my career, right? Real estate, right? Like trying to fabricate a personality and trying to just pretend to be someone that I'm not.
Yeah.
Like people can, one, see right through it, and two, when you're genuine, you can build trust that much quicker.
It's crazy, yeah.
Right? So when you get hit with a question, like you said, to sit there and to kind of digest it, and now you're thinking, oh man, like I'm taking way too long to answer this, right? Mm-hmm. Versus like just an I don't know will go a long way, right? Or getting into what you do know, right? Because again, that just builds so much more trust with people.
For sure. And I find too, with the building trust part, every time I think about it, it's tough to, if you're not being yourself, and it means you're not being vulnerable. And if you're not being vulnerable, and I don't mean a state where I'm like breaking down, crying, talking about all my trauma every time. I just mean a state of like you're able to give an opinion without the fear, or going over what you might believe is the fear of saying, or somebody being upset or something. Then you open that line of trust where it's like you bridge the gap of, well, why would I expect you to open up if I'm not willing to share either? Yeah. Right? It makes it a bit of like a jam. And if I'm like, oh, that's a good way of looking at it. So the more you build the trust, the more you create that authenticity for yourself, then especially if you're the same person with every single individual, it kind of gets hard to fake, right? Because if you were faking, you'd be exhausting.
Oh, for sure. And that's, I had a lot of different groups of friends growing up, right? And that was one thing originally that I had done, right? Yeah. Even though I could get up in front of a crowd of people, I would still kind of cater my personality to being around different groups of people. For sure. And it does get exhausting, right? Not to say that, I would do something with one group of friends that I wouldn't do elsewhere. It was just just the tone and just the way that I acted was a little bit different. Mm-hmm. But then, eventually, maybe it's just maturity, confidence, whatever you want to chalk it up to, right? But eventually, like you said, it just gets exhausting, and people buy in for the vulnerability, right? Putting up walls and being super confident. Like people read that the wrong way. There's nothing wrong with being confident, but if that's all people see with you, then they're going to think...
unfortunate. That's how it goes.
Well, yeah, they're going to think, oh, look at this arrogant guy, right? Versus if you show them, look, I'm human too. I got stuff going on, right? Just like everybody else. Not, like you said, breaking down and crying, right? But joking around and saying, like, oh, man, I had a crap day too. Yeah,
like feel free sharing and kind of...
Right? And if people don't bite, who cares?
Yeah.
Right? If they don't engage with that, then it's not that you're some soft pathetic loser now. It's just like, oh, you know what, I opened up, they weren't receptive to it, move on.
Fair.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, step one into real estate, what was that when you're like, I'm gonna pull the trigger on this is what I'm gonna focus on moving forward? What did the initial steps look like? I know they're different for everybody. I know there's also probably like a basic set of steps you have to go through. What did it look like for you?
So first of all, it was, can I see myself doing this, right? I think that's like where most people would start, is do I think I have what it takes, right? Definitely for myself, I spent maybe a little bit too long on that question. I was kind of questioning my abilities. I'm like, geez, like this seems really intimidating, right? But I think that's like with any major change, right? You're gonna have those feelings. So looking back, like it was a normal reaction. So that was really my first thought. But then I'm like, okay, well, I know people that do this. I mean, it's in my blood. My mom did it for 20 years before me.
Right, what it looks like to be successful in that.
Right, and I grew up in it. I grew up in a real estate office. I grew up, moving files. I grew up, listening to phone calls in the car, right? So, like, for someone that doesn't have that and they can also be successful, I'm like, well, this is in my blood, and I grew up with it in this environment. Right? So, what am I waiting for? So then from there... so that would be like my first suggestion, I guess, to anyone that's thinking about it is like, why, what do you have to bring to the table here? Right? Because it's not for everyone. It's a lot of work, right? It's not consistent.
Right. True. Yeah, that's.
And these are things that I'm learning now, even 2.5 years in, right? Is that it's very up and down. there's a lot of things that you can control, but there's a lot of things that you can't, right?
Right.
You've been working with someone for 9 months, and all of a sudden they get into a car accident, and now they can't buy that house anymore, right? You don't get paid till it's done. So that time investment that you made is, there's
Gone.
zero monetary value now, right?
See, yeah.
So that's that's a big shocker for some people when they get into
sure.
it, and they expect to make a dime as soon as you start get going. But
It takes a while.
when I switched to sales full time, I didn't make a paycheck in 5 months,
Jeez.
right?
Yeah.
And that was tough.
Yeah, I can
So,
only imagine.
especially to switch from another industry, right? Like I was making a pretty comfortable living doing management before,
Yeah.
and then when I switched into this, like I said, I didn't get paid for 5 months. Very big lifestyle changes since then, and very
Yeah, no kidding.
when you learn, okay, like this is what it's like to not have money again, right?
Yeah.
It changes things about you. So,
Like what?
well, for instance, just useless spending, right?
Oh, yeah.
Buying things that you don't need. It's so cliche to say, like, oh, buy the things that you need, not that you want,
Yeah.
right? But then,
It's easier said than done.
well,
yeah.
exactly, right? And like when you get caught up with like, oh, if I want something, I can have it because I have the means to afford it,
Yeah.
right? But
Get
then
used to that.
once the gravy train stops, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, now you got to get a lot more disciplined. You you look around surrounded by all this crap, and you're like, man, did I really need all this, right?
Yeah. Oh, no kidding.
Another thing is just being more, I guess, financially literate when it comes to just buying amenities, right? Like, why are you buying a $20 bottle of shampoo when there's a just as good $4 one right next to it,
Yeah.
right? The name, right?
Yeah, really.
It's like, and it doesn't mean that you have to go, no name brand everything, right?
Right.
It's just about making compromises where it otherwise doesn't matter, right? Like
True, yeah.
sour cream and onion chips. It's like, is there really a big difference between the name
Yeah.
brand and the regular one, right?
Just a price, really.
That's it, right? You're paying an extra premium every
Yeah.
single time
100%.
for the exact same thing,
Yeah.
right?
It's crazy.
I know it's not like, I wouldn't say it's being cheap.
No.
It's just a matter of just being honest with yourself and saying,
Yeah.
like, staying within my means, right? And just being a bit more selective when it comes to, again, like, especially when it comes to going out to restaurants or, doing events and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, you work to enjoy the fruits of your labor,
For sure.
but also you have to live, right?
Yeah, man,
There's
no,
very
sure.
real costs to living too,
Yeah.
right? So that was a huge, huge shift.
So, how did you, I guess in that time, were you budgeting? Were you tracking? Like, do you track finances now? Like, it could be both professionally and personally, but do you track your finances now?
Somewhat.
Yeah. I was curious if people budget.
Yeah, so it started with that.
Yeah.
It started with that, and it started with just writing down, okay, here are all my fixed costs. I know I have to pay these things every single month.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. What does it cost to live baseline, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Like, for me, I own my home, so, like, I have a mortgage, I have utilities, right? I practice what I preach.
Right.
I have a mortgage, I
love
have
it.
utilities, I have taxes to pay, right?
Yeah.
So I have, those very real fixed costs, and then there's, like, my cell phone, there's my car, there's my insurance, right? Like, so there's all of these things where I'm like, okay, I know that at the very minimum, I'm spending this much,
Yeah.
right? Then on top of that, there's, like, the things that vary, so, like, for instance, groceries or, restaurants and, like, other spending, right? Like, so
Yeah.
not all the necessary things, but some necessary things, but
For
it's
sure.
just bound to go up and down.
Yes, sir.
So then it was a matter of, like, okay, get into the habit of being just conscious and see where those numbers end up, right? And that's what worked for me. Instead of, like, capping myself and being like, you know what, you're only allowed to spend $200 on groceries. Well, then what if the one time, I know that I'm going to be at home for a long period of time, right? Because, like, I take trips enough of the time, right? Whether it be to go visit family or even just going over to family members' places for dinner, right? So I know that number is going to fluctuate. It's going to go up sometimes, and sometimes it's going to come down, right?
Right.
So it's keeping that balance in mind.
Yeah.
So, but it was really more about just laying out some sort of structure and opening my eyes to, like, okay, this is what you can expect, and then just be reasonable everywhere else.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Right, during that time, especially if you're not sure. Do you have a take me through those first you said didn't sell a home, but you said you didn't get your first commission or paycheck for the first 5 months.
Yeah.
Take me through that first 5 months. What did that look like?
So at first, I was working at one office here in town, and I just straight up changed environment.
Yeah.
Right. I went to a completely different place. I separated from my mom. Like, we were good. There was no,
Sure. Yeah.
nothing there. But the rumor mill, right?
Yeah, that's how it
People
goes,
think
man.
they know. So, mentally, it was adjusting first.
For sure.
Right, and getting used to new systems and getting used to just going into a different place and just a completely different lifestyle. So that was about like a month's worth of adjusting, but it's not like I get paid hourly, right? Where I'm getting paid to figure it out. It's like I'm figuring out, but I need to kind of hurry it up because I need to, get going, right? And then the thing about real estate is you don't really get to pick when people are ready to buy a house, right? It's about
interesting.
Working your network and figuring out, okay, like I know X amount of people, go through that list and just kind of check in with people, right? Check in with them and say, hey, I'm not here to sell you a house over the phone, right? I just want to know, where are you at? It's been a while since I talked to you, right? And then you can get into like personal things, right? It's not just a sales call, right?
Sure.
It's like, hey, you know what? I haven't seen you since, university, right? Like, what are you up to? How's it going, right? And then you kind of just, so that was what I did, was I qualified my, circle first.
Nice.
Right? And then from there, I found a couple of people that I knew that I had previous, relationships with, and they just so happened to, be interested in the market already, right?
Oh, nice.
And the timing just worked out. So for them, I found the two of them, and then they looked at, quite a bit of places for a little bit. Again, I'm not making any money in the meantime.
Crazy.
I'm paying the gas. I'm taking the time, right? We're going out to Lively. We're going to Falconbridge. We're going to Capriol, right? Like
all the ends.
Everywhere, right?
Oh.
Not a single dime. And then finally, they found. We made some offers on a few things, and it didn't pan out. But eventually, they found something. They got an accepted offer, firmed up, and then the closing was 2 months later. So. You don't get paid till close.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, fair.
So we did the 3-month journey, right? Spent all the time, did the work, right? And then had to wait 2 more months after that.
Epic.
Right? So,
Insane.
excuse me, and that's not even guaranteed, right?
Yeah.
People pull out of closings all the time.
Yeah.
So it's like different stages of the process are rewarding, right? And that was a major adjustment for me. When I heard that someone I knew was considering buying a house, right? I was like, oh, wow, okay, new client, here we go, paycheck coming up, right? But then it was, okay, well, I've been working with them for a little bit, okay, maybe that, it cooled off, right? I was like, okay, I got to be reasonable. Yeah. Found a house, they're like, oh, okay, like we're writing an offer now,
no.
right? Here we go, right? Here we go, finally some progress, right? We wrote the offer, they didn't get the house. Man, now I'm not getting paid again, right?
Come on.
And then it turned into... okay, accepted offer. Great, here we go, right?
Yeah.
And then it was conditional on a home inspection, and the home inspection didn't pass. Back down again, right? Okay, offer firmed up. Here we go.
Yeah.
Like, now it's closing in 2 months, and now I'm still waiting, right? So that's been a major adjustment for me, right? It's interesting because even like, still working on trying to build a cushion, right? Because I had to pay 5 months worth of expenses.
For sure,
right?
yeah.
So I'm still in that building process, but what's really interesting is now, because I've kind of gotten used to it, right? And just have started to develop a bit more sense of humanity, not just like a sense of my pocket, right? Now it's an afterthought.
Yeah.
Right? Now it's an afterthought, and I think I celebrate the wins in terms of like, okay, I actually explained something really confusing to somebody today.
Yeah.
And I helped them. That's a win for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's instant gratification. It's not delayed with like getting paid, right? It's I provided value to someone today. I showed them a house and they really liked it, and now they're really excited, right? Like I was able to make that happen. Mm-hmm. They were really confused about something that we talked about at the house, and I clarified it for them, and now they feel way better, right?
Nice.
There's just so much more fulfillment instead of just focusing on the check every time, right? It's now little wins that now lead to a big victory, and then finally, now when that house closes, now they're excited, they're starting a new chapter, and then at the end they want to take a picture with me because I was an integral part of the process.
For sure.
Right? And their family's super excited, and everyone's like, you know what, we really, really appreciate everything that you did for us, right?
Amazing.
So that now is what I'm after.
Amazing, yeah.
And it's so cliche, but the money is a byproduct now
Yeah.
of chasing that, those small short-term wins.
It does feel like the paycheck happens so much later that if you focus on that, you'll ultimately fail.
Well, that's just it. And then again, talking about just being genuine,
Yep.
right? If you go into it thinking, okay, here's a check, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now every house you look at, you're going to be like, oh, well,
You're doing the numbers in your head.
well, that, and also you're biased, right?
Oh, I see.
Instead of thinking about what their needs are, you're thinking about your own. So you walk into a house that you know is not a good fit for them, but then you're like overselling it, right? And you're like,
just so they buy it,
don't
so you get. Oh.
That's right. That's right. Which I hate to say it, and
That's
this is
terrible.
not, this is totally against the industry, but like there are still people that have that mindset.
I can imagine a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it is a sales business, right? It is very much like it's 100% commission driven.
Yeah.
Right. And when you close something, that's when you get paid. So people are obsessed with the numbers, right? But there are a good chunk of people that shifted their focus, right? And frankly, they're not miserable anymore, right? Or maybe they never thought that way. But the point being is it's just a way healthier mindset to have, to focus on helping people and helping them achieve their needs. You build relationships so much quicker.
Yeah, for sure.
You leave a lasting impression with them instead of them feeling rushed and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
You help them, like I said, you start this new chapter with them, and now you send them off, and it doesn't end there anymore either, right? Before, when it was get paid, never talk to them again.
Yeah.
Now it's check in, right? Every 3-6 year, right? And just be like, hey, how are things? Are you adjusting well, right? I know that there's always a little bit of trouble when you're getting into your first home, right? There might be a leak here or there or whatever, right? Do you need someone to help, right? I have a network of people that, I can put you in touch with to fix a leak in the roof or fix a plumbing leak if you can't handle it yourself, right? So it's continuing after the fact to add value, right? And again, when you chase that instead, it's the money comes second.
So, how many houses have you closed on so far? You've closed that
Since going full time, or in general?
Since going full time. Let's do that.
This was since July of last year. I've closed 11 now.
Sick.
Yeah.
Okay. What about in total?
In total, I think I did 4 before I left, and then the year before that was 7. So 11
nice.
plus 11, so 22.
Sweet. So I know we're our whole last focus. I'm gonna go against the last focus of what we were just talking about, which is away from the numbers. But I do have a question.
Yeah.
And you don't have to answer it, but I think it'd be fun if you did. What was the largest commission you received?
Largest gross I've received, because there's a lot of stuff that comes.
I
off
can imagine there's fees and
taxes there's a
and
lot of stuff that comes off of it.
Just curious.
I think the biggest gross I've ever done, and I'm not private about it either.
Yeah,
it's very easy to just
it's very easy
run
to
the math,
yeah.
I think maybe like 13.
Nice.
13,000 on one deal.
Oh shit.
Yeah, but there was a lot of stuff that came off of that. So my take home at the end of that was probably like $6,500.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, but I had to
for a few months of work and trying to.
Yeah, like it came from someone else, and then I had to pay someone else because of the referral, and then
I see you.
There's money that goes like I said, you just take a lot of different hits.
Yeah.
But yeah, people look at the like on either end of a deal, and said bringing the average is like 2.5% plus tax, right, of the sale price, right? Yeah. So that one was like a $600-something thousand building.
Nice.
But then piece came off, and then by the end of it, I walked away with half of that.
Yeah. What type of fees and everything are there? Like if there's a sell and everything goes well, and what at the end has to be paid? Like what gets paid to not just you, but to everybody, to the office, to the lawyers? Like, what does that look like?
So on the sales side, or as the agent?
As the agent.
Okay, so from top to bottom, first of all is your real estate commission, right?
Right.
So the Canadian Real Estate Association, the Ontario Real Estate Association, and then the Sudbury Real Estate Board all need dues, right?
All those government
Then
entities.
yeah, right. Then there's liability insurance.
Yeah.
So that's that like these are the costs that come before you even get paid.
Yeah. That makes
Right.
sense.
So you got to have like a couple grand stacked up just to get going, right, for the year.
Yeah.
So those are considerations, and then from there, depending on the office that you work with, if you're a part of a team or whatever, right? There's different splits and stuff like that,
For
right?
sure, yeah.
So to be associated with an office, you'll pay a desk fee every month, right? And they'll usually work something out with your check to take money out instead of you paying up front,
Smart.
right? So they'll take money out of your check for that, and then, for instance, if you're the listing agent, right? You'll pay to market the house that's for sale or building, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So there's the photos, there's videos, there's whatever else your value proposition is, staging sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So there's those costs that are associated with it, and then again, if you belong to like a real estate group or you belong to different places, sometimes they take as much as 60%.
No kidding.
To be where people are at. So
Makes sense.
There's a lot of trickle down costs, and then whatever's left over is what you get to keep.
Sick.
But I mean, that to say, like, different offices, different groups, different teams, they all have different things to offer, and then you pay for that, right?
Yeah.
Excuse me, like before, my desk fee was like $1,000 a month, right? I didn't get anything for it, but that's just how much it was, right? Everything else that I made after that came to me,
Sick.
right? Versus now, there's resources that I utilize through the office that I'm with, right?
Yeah.
And then so many things come off, and then I get the difference.
So
But
more, but you wouldn't have those resources prior.
that's right. That's
yeah.
right. And to be, where I'm at now, like I told you, I've done 11 deals since I left, and then before that, it was 2 years worth of being an agent, and I've basically doubled my numbers
Sick.
in
Damn right.
8 months as opposed to 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So
Really.
without those resources, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
So that was what was important to me.
So, what are some common misconceptions people might have about agents, real estate agents specifically?
That's actually a great question. First of all, when someone asks you if you have a realtor, you can be honest, right? A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, I have someone already," right? When they just don't want to talk about it, right? You can tell them that you don't, and it's not all of a sudden like, "Okay, now you're stuck with me," right?
Yeah.
Like you still have a choice at the end of the day. All that they're trying to do is just know, if that you're spoken for, right? In the sense of like, I can give someone information, right? I can give anyone a certain piece of information, right? But as soon as like there's another agent involved, I can't really give advice anymore, right? Because you already are represented, right? So that's where it can get tricky, especially as like a first time person, right? First time buyer, right?
Yeah.
Where that one piece of advice could be crucial to like your entire journey, right? And you can decide if you want to use that agent or not, right? But if you just tell them straight up, "Oh yeah, no, I have somebody," well then you're missing out on that piece of advice.
Yeah.
Another misconception, a bit biased, is that realtors get way overpaid to do next to nothing.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
That is like every Instagram comments thread that has anything
Every
to do
single
with
one.
the
Yeah.
realtor,
And,
right?
But the more I meet you guys, the more I talk to you, it's the less I believe that.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I work way more as a realtor than I did as a property manager. Property manager was all inbound. I'd kick around and wait for people to call and complain to me, and then I would handle the complaints, right?
Sick.
Versus now, I'm all outbound.
Oh, it's proactive work.
Right.
Less.
And like I told you, someone could be looking at a house for 9 months, they get into a car accident, they can't buy a house anymore, right?
9 months of...
You get nothing for it, right?
Crazy.
So it's one of those things where it averages out. I mean, you'd say to someone that, works at valet, they work, 12-hour shifts and they walk away with $100,000 at the end of the year, right? Like, we're kind of the same thing. You'll work a 12-hour day as a realtor, sometimes get paid nothing for it, sometimes make, $6,000 in a day.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, to say that we're overpaid, and, like, especially for first-time people.
Yeah.
Like, I say first-time people as opposed to first-time buyers, because that's incentive. Like that's, to me, that has a theme of you're stuck buying something, right? Versus being a first-time person, right? I'm a realtor, you know what I'm talking about, right? You're a first-timer, like this is your first go, right? It just makes it feel more comfortable. It's not manipulation. It's just making you feel more comfortable and me, not basically insinuating that I'm trying to sell you something, saying that, oh, you're a first-time buyer, that means you're going to buy something, right? As opposed to say, oh, this is your first time, right? But where was I going with that? Oh, they get the most value.
Yeah.
Right? Because they don't know. They've never done it before. Right? Maybe their parents did, but their parents might have done it 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? So they're not quite up to snuff. Right? The market's very different now than it was 5-10 years ago.
Crazy.
Right? So, like, to work with a buyer,
Yeah.
absolutely worth it. A seller, on the other hand, right? Like, managing showing appointments, managing, photography, videography, staging, to have the reach that, agents do, right? Like, I have a listing at the time of this recording coming up, right? And I'm just like, you know what? Everyone that I know that might be interested in this, it hasn't even hit the market yet. And I've been shopping it around to everybody that I know.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right? Versus, like, if you're just a, independent seller, right? Then, how do you... Right? Like, your network isn't as big, or you're not actively working with people that are buying.
Yeah.
Right? So, and it's not an unfair advantage. It's not like, oh, I'll get you in before it hits the market, and, maybe we make an offer happen before. Like, it's not even that. It's just like, I want to get more eyes on it. I want to start generating interest, right? And really, it's a benefit to buyers, because by the time, like, right now, it's way more beneficial for sellers to hit the market than to sell privately, in all honesty.
No kidding.
Right? So, for me, it's about, like, okay, the buyer wants time to do due diligence, right? How's it sell really quickly, right? In 5 days to 7 days.
Seems like it, yeah.
Right? So, getting someone in beforehand, right, is a benefit to the seller, because now the buyer has more information to go off of, right? And less chance of them pulling out or, suing them or something.
For sure.
Right?
Oh, for
and
sure.
the buyer, like I said, has time to be more comfortable, has time to make a longer paced decision, right? So, like, but that's I think a major benefit is working with someone who's involved in the market every day, and who, has already a network of people, or, other agents even, right? Say, hey, I've got something coming up, and, everyone does it.
Yeah.
A lot, like most agents do that, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I know that you had a buyer that was looking in, New Sudbury for a 3-bed 1-bath, right? Just a heads up, I got one coming up, so maybe, if you want to give them a heads up, then it might be coming up soon. You know what I mean? Like, go so much further than just taking pictures, smiling, and then putting it on the internet.
Yeah. Huh. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's good to know. It makes,
Right?
it makes you feel better.
Yeah.
Feel a bit better. Oh, that's great.
And, that, like, on average, it's like 5%, as the seller to list your house. So, and then that's broken up between a buyer's agent and a seller's agent. So, like, that, there's, not studies, there's stats that show working with an agent gets you X amount of dollars more on your listing.
Both ways, or just... like you save more versus...
Well, like, let's say for instance, like, well, it actually happened. There was a guy in our office that there was someone trying to sell their own house. They had it listed at 380, and it didn't sell for months, right? He, by some way, made contact with them, sat down with them, said, hey, look, this is how it's going to work, this and that, whatever. He listed it and ended up selling it for like $440,000, right? So $60K more than they were even asking for in the first place, right? Take 5% off of that. They walked away with more money in their pocket after paying realtors than just doing it themselves.
I see.
Yeah.
They opted to go with... okay.
Yeah. They didn't want to do it at first.
Yeah.
But then after hearing the value, they decided to do it.
Oh, no kidding.
And then they walked away with
more
60
than
grand more.
what they would have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Right? So
it's just the resources, eh?
that it's
what,
so many
things,
things, right? Like I said, it's about presentation. It's about knowing what's going to speak to people in the market, right? When you're, you could be a software engineer, right? Yeah. How do you know what people are looking for in a house, right? Most people think like kitchen, bathroom, right? But then
dishwasher.
Then there's people that have a family, and they want to make sure that the rooms have closets, and they want to make sure that it's in a good neighborhood, right? Like
big difference. Yeah,
it's not really
backyard,
hard.
front yard.
It's not hard to put a kitchen in, really.
No.
Right?
It's not that difficult.
Or even just to know someone that knows how to do it, right? So like to focus just on like the new kitchen. Well, everyone can have that, or everyone might have that already, right?
Yeah.
What makes you different? Why does your house deserve to be sold over the one next door?
Right.
So it's about picking those things out too.
Oh, interesting. Fun location is a lot more important than on ultimately what the inside of the house looks like.
It can be. You
can move stuff around and down the walls.
Yeah. It depends on people's motivation too, right? Like if they want to be close to work, well then obviously a location that's close to work is going to be big for them.
Massive.
But there's people that just prefer to be more private, right?
Yep.
So that's when all of a sudden Chelmsford, Hanmer, like Coniston, Wanapate, like those outer areas.
Yeah.
Now they all kind of start to become the same.
Right.
Right? In the sense of like, okay, you just want to be out of the city.
Yeah. Hey, Zach, I want to be able to shoot my gun off and it not be against the law.
Right.
You'd be like, okay, out of the city limits it is.
Hey, man, if a tree falls in the forest, no one's around, right?
That's it. It's like, what if there's no forest? So, right, we're trying to get there. So I'm like, oh, okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
That being okay. Now, how old were you when you bought your first house? You've purchased the one, correct?
Yeah.
You live in it still?
Yeah.
Nice. So, when did you buy it?
22 years old. 2022.
Oh, it was a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, dude. Congrats.
Thank you.
What was the, I guess you had been around it for a while, so you kind of like knew the integral steps. When you were first starting out, what was something that took place that you, like a hurdle you maybe had to overcome when you were first buying your first home that you maybe didn't know until you got through that process?
That's a really interesting question. It actually kind of bundles with something you said earlier. I had no idea what I was doing when I bought my first house. I was writing my own offers. It was a bit of an interesting situation.
Yeah.
Essentially, the agent that I was working with was like, okay, you're getting your license.
Yeah.
You can write your own offers with my review, right? Like, I'm going to look over them and I'm going to correct them and stuff like that, right? So I wasn't just throwing them out there, no supervision either, right? But I was writing them thinking that I knew what I was doing, right? And now that I look back at it, I'm like, man, you're an idiot. Like there was so many things that I could have changed and made better and, just negotiated differently, right? So with your second question, like what was a big hurdle for me? It was understanding how bidding wars actually work, right?
Oh.
Which I think like bombshell, right? Big answer coming up, right?
Yeah, here we go.
A lot of people don't understand what bidding wars are actually, right? And conversation I have literally 7 times a day. I've counted.
Not just every day, but
multiple times a day. I work with a lot of first-time buyers, Glenn.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly telling people, asking price is not what the place is worth. Okay, so asking price is all strategy. It's built to fit search engines. It's built to fit algorithms. It's built to fit, right? Like when you post an ad for a house on Facebook, it's going to market it to people that have, a specific budget, right? Based on other things that Facebook has gathered or whatever, right? So, a $280,000 house is going to show up in front of more people, right, than a $310,000 house, right? And people are going to have the misconception that it's a great deal and think, okay, like this is within my budget. I want to go look at it, right? But in actuality, the house was worth $310 to begin with. Right. It's worth $310, listed for $280. It's to try to draw in as much attention as possible, and then to try to right. So selling, for instance, here's a great example. So recently there was a house that was listed at $399, right? And I told my people, I'm like, it's worth around like $435, right? So a pretty significant underlist. Right, $35,000 less than what it's worth. Right, it ended up selling for $471. Right, so substantially higher. Right, like that was a bit of an outlier of an offer, and we don't know. We know that there were 7 other offers, but we don't know what was on them. Right, but I know for a fact that was definitely like someone just decided to go full tilt and like really overpay for it, right?
Yeah, but just to make sure they got it, I guess.
Exactly, but what you don't see outside looking in is, well, first of all, you see sold for $72,000 over asking, right? But in actuality, it only sold for $30,000 more, right? Which is still a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
But it's far less intimidating when you go to the next one and it only sold $10,000 over, right? There have been a number of sales recently that were underlisted. Like for instance, one was $350, and it ended up selling for $460, right? $110,000 over ask. The place was worth $440. They paid $20,000 more for it, right? Which, at the rate of things are appreciating right now, you make that money back in a year. Right. So overpaying is not the end of the world right now, because of how high real estate is in demand. Yeah. And there just isn't enough supply.
Right. It's just securing that asset.
That's right. And it will grow over time.
Yeah.
Right? But like I mentioned, it's not about you know, how much it sold for over ask. It's about how much it sold for over value. And so for me, and where my mistake was I was so concerned about competing against everyone else. I competed against 9 other people. My house, when I bought it, was listed for $240. Okay, I was so concerned about what everyone else was paying that I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna go full tilt and throw in a big offer.
Oh jeez.
Right, and it didn't even end up working out for me. I ended up offering 308 on a place that was listed 240, right? That at the time was probably worth around like 280, right? I still didn't get it.
What?
Right? The deal fell through, and I was one of the first people to resubmit my offer, and then I went back and forth with the seller until we settled on 310. So for my first house, right, I paid $310,000 for it was otherwise worth around like 270, 280. Now, this was in 2022.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
3 years later, my house is probably worth 340 grand, and I paid 310 for it.
Huh.
You know what I mean? So I've made 30 grand on my house
2 years.
in 2.5 years, right?
Ah.
It was originally worth 280. So I overpaid for it, but
Yeah.
I've already made that equity back and then some.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I practice what I preach, man. This is what I tell every person that I run into.
Yeah.
You can go a little bit over. I know from experience, right? As long as it's in good shape, as long as you're not dumping money into it, right? Like, if you go a little bit over for something that's in good condition, in a good area, et cetera, right?
Yeah, check most of your boxes, or all of them.
Right? And it's livable and it's somewhere you want to be, right? You can go a little bit more. It's just about also making sure that your monthly bills are met, too.
True,
right?
yeah. I can't blow your
Because,
budget.
you know, we can look at the big numbers, right? We can look at the big numbers. We can say, oh, wow, like, you know, went for 30 grand more than asking, or more than value, right? But what does that look like monthly, right? It's a few $100,
Yeah.
right? Which can be a big difference to some people.
Big difference for
right?
sure.
But for others, it's like, oh, you know what? And between myself and my partner, right? Like, we both have full-time employment, right? An extra $100 for each of us, right? If we're splitting it, right? Is not the end of the world for a house that we really want in an area that we
So
really
we don't
want.
have a Pat and Mario's dinner every other day. It's like now we have it once a week.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's I think one of my biggest lessons learned is, you know, you got to be just focused more so on what you're doing, not just trying to beat everyone else.
Yeah.
And if you have the room to be comfortable and not go house broke either, which is a big one.
Yeah.
If you have the room to be comfortable and to you know, pay a little bit more, you're bound to make that money at some point back. It's just the only thing we don't know is, you know, whatever the market's going to do, you know, crash or
peaks
spike
and valleys over time.
Well, exactly, right? But historically, real estate appreciates, right? So it will come back at some point. Might not be tomorrow, but eventually, you know.
Fair.
Yeah.
So, what would you say is a good number to start when it comes to how much money to save in order for a down payment? There's down payment money, and then how much for the rest of the nonsense fees? Because somebody might say like, oh, I want to save X amount to meet just the down payment, but they forget there's like 18 grand worth of fees. So what does that look like for budgeting? Yeah.
So, I mean, the golden rule is to have an extra 2% of the purchase price in, you know, in savings. I honestly, when it comes to like gearing up for that, I just give people straight up estimates or quotes of like what the very specific nitty gritty is going to cost.
Oh,
right?
sick. Yeah.
So, for instance, like if I know, okay, they're really early in their home buying journey, you know, this is who they know, right? For instance, their dad's a contractor. Chances are they're probably not going to need a home inspector, right? So paying that sort of money, right, is now off the table. So I'll tell them like, look, you know, you just like because of that, you just saved yourself, you know, $600 on a home inspection, right? Maybe they know a lawyer, right? Or maybe they have a family lawyer that the family's used a bunch of times or whatever they have you, right? So like general rule of thumb is to have like, you know, your 5% down, right, and then an extra 2% on top of that. But if you have the resources, then you know it's important to, you know, factor some of those in when you're working with it. And you know, sometimes it's more than 2%, sometimes it's less. The more than 2% would really be if like, say, it's not often that it happens, but like if somebody along the line, you know, misses a step, or you know there might be an extra fee or something, or you know, like when you take on your house, there might be some things that you got to take care of, right? Like
For sure, yeah.
there's so many. Then that's kind of one of the downsides with home ownership is that there's so many things that can happen at any time,
Yeah.
right? Where you're gonna kind of want a safety net just in case. But yeah, like you know, general rule of thumb is 2% on top
Right.
of the 5.
On top of the 5.
Yeah.
Do you recommend getting, if people can, or if they just wait a bit longer, to get the 20% and void CMHC?
Well, think of it this way, right? Like
Yeah.
5% now of 400,000 is what 20% or 20,000.
I know 20%. Yeah.
Yeah. So
20% of 300,000 is always the number I look at. Because I always think for flip, for 300,000 is 60.
yeah,
That's 20%, which I don't think is actually that crazy.
it is and it isn't, right? Like
but
so
if you got two people working full time and your intent is to save up and you budget well enough and you don't, and you're frugal, you're not too crazy with your spending, then I don't think it's.
yeah. So to do 20% of 400 is 80,
Yeah,
right? And
makes
then
sense.
5% of that is 20, right?
Yeah, okay. That
So to come up with 60 grand, right? Because the reason why Glenn's asking the question is because when you put 20% or more, you can avoid this thing that's called CMHC insurance, and
Yeah.
at the risk of taking up an hour. Basically, it's just insurance for in case you default on your mortgage, the bank is protected.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
If you put less than 20% down, it's required.
Right.
So you pay for that. It's an insurance premium, right? So it gets rolled into your mortgage and it costs you an extra few $100 a month, right? So to save 20% to avoid that, right? Like 20 grand versus 80 grand, right? To come up with $60,000, right? If you're someone that's paying rent and like maybe has a kid or two, right? Like to put aside an extra 60 grand is not
It's
doable
forever.
in just a handful of months, right?
No.
So, in my opinion, the faster you can get into the market when you're ready,
Yeah.
is the best
Huge.
time, right? Everyone's like, oh, I want to wait for this, I want to wait for that, whatever, right?
Cool.
All the while, in the past 5 years, our median sale price has doubled, So,
Yeah.
it's like, 5 years ago, right, someone, may have been like, oh, you know what, I'm going to wait for, the market to crash because, COVID's happening, right? But then the market didn't crash, and it just kept going, right? Oh,
Right.
the housing bubble's going to pop, right? That was the word in 2022, right? We're way past that now,
Yeah. What is it?
So instead of trying to read the market, especially in Sudbury is a very interesting, like, protected kind of bubble, right? So if you can afford it, right? If you have, the 5% plus the 2% closing costs, if you're comfortable with, what the mortgage would look like, what the utilities would look like, right? You're way better off to get into the market sooner, right? Instead of trying to come up with 20% to just, try to save a few $100 a month.
Right. Well, I asked too because like not only that, but there's the approval. Like now you need a secondary approval, right? Like CMHC has to the building, right? Like the value of it, I guess.
So that, I mean, it is an extra like hurdle that has to be done.
It's not as bad as
But no, it's not.
Yeah.
Like for instance, for flips, they're going to be a bit more, conscientious, right? They're going to be like,
they're in way worse shape.
well, this is a high risk loan for us, right? Because if you default on it on a half built project, right, the chances of them seeing that money back are, not really high,
Slim
right?
most of the time.
Versus if it's just a single family home that's in a good area, it's in decent shape. Actually, the bank doesn't really care about location as much. They really care about condition and they care about like liability, right? If there's a high chance that the house is going to burn down, well then they're not going to loan on it.
They look at a lot of like electrical inspection and stuff like that. Like what do they kind of look at?
They're more concerned about just what's known about the house, right? If there's a history of like if they know that it has dated electrical, if they know that it has like I don't know, like 10 wood burning appliances in it. You know what I mean? Like things that are going to
tube.
Yeah, right.
Like,
things that are going to affect the home, right? Where if the bank ends up being stuck with it, how hard is it going to be for them to get their money back, right?
I see. Okay.
Actually, on the topic of the bank and misconceptions, bank repos, off-market bank repos don't exist.
Off-market bank repos.
Yes.
Don't exist.
So to break that down, a lot of people think that like, oh, there's people that have like these secret lists of like bank repos out there, right? Where people defaulted and the bank like took the house back and then sell it off the market, right? To get a deal on it.
Yes.
Doesn't exist. Legally, has to hit the market.
Come on.
Yeah. And they have to list it at
Who they
something
listed
that's deemed
as?
appropriate. It'll be listed as
Like it's like a lottery where like certain.
so. Like you saying, like who would they say like is the owner of it, or
Yeah.
so the way it works. Let's say
Because it's foreclosed on, right?
that's right.
Like,
That's right.
I'm
So
wondering.
it depends on the lender. So if it's the bank, right,
Yeah.
it will straight up read like Toronto Dominion, like or Royal Bank of Canada, or like it will say like the bank is the seller, and there's all sorts of like restrictions on like how it's sold and how the offers are presented, right? It takes a lot longer. It needs to be reviewed by a lot of people, right? So bank repos are actually kind of harder to get your hands on because they take so long. If it's like a private lender or something like that, it's gonna say the original person that was on title, and then it'll read someone as power of sale, right?
Okay.
That they've essentially taken it, right?
That makes sense.
So that's a big one, I think, is that these like off market bank repos don't exist. They have to hit the market.
Oh.
Yeah. It's about exposure.
Yeah.
Right? It's about the bank trying to make as much money back as they can.
Right. Why would they want to do backroom deals?
Right. And it's also just a matter of what's fair.
Right.
So
fair, yeah. That's true.
That's like they have to show that they made every legitimate effort to get as much money for it as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. So you've been in property management, you've talked to hundreds of tenants, right?
Yeah.
Or even heard of, tenant horror stories.
Yeah.
Maybe working like having your own or knowing other people by proxy. What are some or one horrifying or like tenant horror story you can you could share that?
I'm always hesitant because you never know who's listening.
You do never know, yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah. Some things have come out though that I'm like,
yeah,
I don't think anybody watches this if nobody said anything about that. But
yeah, I think
crazy.
Worst tenant horror story. I've definitely had my good handful.
Yeah. You can be general too, but
yeah,
certain details for sure.
I think.
Or one that comes up a lot that is like easy to avoid.
I think. Okay, so I'll give an example of like a crazy one and then one that can be easily avoided.
For sure.
So.
Thank you.
One that I had was there was this girl that wasn't paying, and she was a user, unfortunately, to the point where we eventually weren't getting an answer, and it's exactly what you'd expect. Like she had passed away, right? And so went to court and everything. She didn't show up. Right?
Makes sense.
Yeah, and so the eviction order happens, and then, notice is posted on the door, show up with the sheriff to do the eviction, open the door, and there's two dudes standing there, right? And we're like, who are these guys, right? And they basically said, if you don't get the hell out of here, we're going to kill you. And we're like, okay, see you later.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And then, after that, we were just like, you know what? Like there's been threats, right? Because like as a landlord or property manager is a different thing. Landlord, it's your place, right? Like you got to figure it out, right? Versus a property manager, as soon as there's danger, right? There's no level of pay that will make it worth it if someone's especially threatening to kill you, right?
Zero.
So then we have to step away.
Yeah.
Then we have to say, we're sorry, but you know what? There's a very real imminent safety threat here, right?
Yeah.
So we have to discontinue services, right? So however that ended up playing out, is what happened. But yeah, when you get threatened, you can't really, it's not worth it. Now as for something that's totally avoidable,
you can't really avoid that one.
Tenant horror stories involving like sale of a property or a multifamily. A lot of times tenants that don't want to leave, are like they're very combative, right?
Yeah.
If you list something for sale and there's a chance that they could get kicked out, right? Depending on how you handle the situation, both as an agent and the landlord, right? And I think both of them have some sort of responsibility here. Like if you don't communicate effectively and you kind of just like give commands as opposed to like trying to work with someone, right? you're far less likely that A, they're going to allow showings,
For
B,
sure.
they're going to be conscious of, keeping a tidy place and how those showings will actually go,
Yeah.
right?
Big difference.
Giving notice is really important, as much notice as possible. Everyone knows the rule of 24 hours minimum, but, if you know a couple days in advance, like, give it to them. Why not? You already know, right?
Yeah.
And if someone cancels, telling them, hey, look, person canceled, so you don't have to worry about it. Like, that stream of communication makes a huge difference, right?
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, watch. If someone needs to, exercise their legal right to move in, right, 60 days notice, they're going to be far more likely to work with you, right? And if you say to them, look, maybe I can, help you find a place, right? Like, maybe throw them some listings, or say, like, actually right now, I've said to one of them, like, hey, you've been working for a few years, you've been paying rent, like, would you consider buying a house? Right, and got him pre-approved, and now we're just waiting to see some listings come
Yeah,
up.
something that he likes.
So
Oh, that's cool.
like, it's just a matter of I think communicating and being reasonable as opposed to just being demanding, and like, put yourself in their shoes, right? If someone said they were going to come over to your house and then they didn't end up doing it, wouldn't you want to know that, right?
Oh, it'd be awesome.
So
Drives me nuts when it does.
Right, you almost have to be more communicative to tenants than your own client.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one that I think can be very easily avoided. Even as a landlord, anything having to do with tenants as a landlord, like, you'd be surprised how much communication and civil conversation will go.
It goes crazy, yeah.
Right, and giving people space. If they're really upset because their unit just flooded, like, I'd probably be pretty mad too, right? And if it's my landlord's job to fix it, I'm going to be demanding, right?
Yeah.
But then, you do what you can, right? And then you just say, look, let's have this conversation once you've settled down a little bit, right? And, just, again, don't meet them down here, right? If people are really upset and really angry, right? Like, be the bigger person, right? And then eventually they'll come around.
Yeah.
Might be longer for others, but yeah.
No, for sure. Do you have, kind of shifting gears and pushing forward, do you, first of all, I've been thinking about this the whole time. Talk me through these glasses you're wearing, dude.
Yeah.
What's going on with them? Was it like the Ray-Ban film ones?
Yes. So these are the Meta Ray-Bans, not sponsored. And I bought them a few months ago. I'm a pretty techie guy.
Yeah.
I used to have an Apple Watch at one point, and then I went swimming with it, and it broke. I know. So, but I loved it. I love incorporating technology into my life. I've been a tech head my entire life. So with these, like, everyone looks at the cameras first and they're like, oh, are you recording? I like them for traveling. Even just walking around, like, in a place that I'm visiting. It's really cool to get, like, first person view. Also, not like, if I want to record something, right, in a public place, I'm not living through my phone anymore, right? Like,
that's a good way to look at it.
Concerts or driving or whatever have you, right? Like, I'm driving down a cool street, like, I just click the button, starts recording, and then I can actually just look at what I actually want to see and focus on that, right? And take it in. So that's how the cameras have really worked for me. But otherwise, like, there's Bluetooth headphones into it, and you can take calls.
Oh, no
there's
kidding.
There's like a little assistant that's built into it, and you can have it, like, send text. Like, it works just like Siri on your phone, except it can also Google things. And, like, I've been in the car before and I've asked it pretty in-depth questions, you know, and it gives me, like, answers that it pulls from the internet. Like, obviously take it with a grain of salt, but, like, I've asked it questions on, like, statistics. I've asked it questions about, like, trends in the market. I've talked to, like, there's a very real business application that I've used it for, on top of just, like, having a cool pair of headphones that I can wear anytime and no one even knows,
What?
So
Yeah,
it's pretty cool daily implementation. The biggest, like, one of the bigger pros is also one of the biggest drawbacks. You're not the guy with earbuds in your ears if you want to listen to music where you go, right? So people don't feel, like, hesitant to try to approach you, right? Like, I still just look like a normal guy. I could be listening to music this whole time and you don't even know, right? But when I'm on the phone, people are like, who's that guy talking to?
Yeah.
Right? Because there's no earbuds, there's no, like, on the phone, right? It's like, I'm just staring forward having a conversation, right? I was in Costco earlier today on the phone, and people were just, like, looking at me, but I'm like, don't care.
I'm busy.
Right? Like, so you get used to the looks.
That's
and
amazing.
Like I said, I'm not really worried about it, what people think, but
Yeah, fair enough. What's the next 3 years look like, entrepreneur-wise, real estate-wise? What does it look like? Both, what do you predict for the market, and then what does the business look like for you?
I think as far as the market goes, like we really have no indication as to if there's going to be a big drop or anything, right? The way that I see it, inflation's very real. There's of course like the cost of living is really high, right? Rent is a direct impact from mortgages, right? Like, because the idea is rent is to pay off the mortgage, right, for an investment property. So, like, as for rents coming down, I don't see that happening. As for like affordability of homes for sale, I also don't see that coming down because we have a lot of new people in this country, right? And whatever your political stance is on that, the fact is they need a place to live, right? So we don't have enough houses. No. We don't have enough units. No. The vacancy rate in Sudbury is less than 1%, right? Crazy. So the demand, basic economics, the demand is really high. Yeah. The supply is very low. Mm-hmm. So prices go up. Go figure, right? Weird. Then factor in
Nobody's
inflation,
building homes,
right? Yeah. And how much it costs to build. Someone that I know was talking to a developer, so like we've got a little bit of a telephone game here. Mm-hmm. But the way that they put it was, for me to build a wicked brand new build in like Coursey Hill, Minnow Lake executive style home, right? It costs me nearly the same, to build like a 2-bed, 1-bath starter home.
What?
And it's not the cost of material; it's the development fees that cost that much. Right? Of course. It's the price of the land. Yeah. It's the price to develop. It's the price for the permits. It's the price for the specialists.
Getting a permanent Sudbury.
Right. And all the while, it costs money to own the land. In the meantime, it costs money to.
You're still paying for it.
You're still paying for it, right? Yeah. All the while, you're just waiting.
And you can get like a construction loan and stuff, but.
Yeah, but then now the interest meters.
The proof and
Right. So like.
There's different things, but.
It takes quite a while. To build one. Right. Let alone. Developers and construction companies like to build a ton, right? It costs a lot of money, right? So those new builds coming up, right, are in Sudbury, upwards of $600,000, right, into the millions, right? Because that's the biggest margin. It's a business for them at the end of the day too, right? To be a builder is not a charity, right?
Oh goodness, no.
You're trying to make a margin, right? So if it costs you, $550,000 to build, a $1 million house, or $550,000 to build a $400,000 house. Like, which one are you taking?
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So, as for the market, I think it's just going to continue to trend upwards, which is sad. I hate that. Like I said, I work with a lot of buyers right now. The people that are getting into the market are the ones who are prepared, and they do the work and they do their due diligence, right? Mm-hmm. They're getting their pre-approvals. They're doing, inspections before offer date. They're, taking advantage of the tools and the things that you can control, right? You can't control the market, but you can control the way that you approach the market. Right. As for myself, I mean, it's really just continuing the grind, man. It's just about, continuing to sharpen the mindset, learn new things, right? I've very much adapted a sponge mentality. Like, this is not new from the past 8 months. Like, this is, ever since I got out of school, was, just always be willing to learn. Always know there's someone that knows more than you. Huge, right? Yeah. Be in the room with those people. Ask them questions. Don't be afraid. A lot of the times you'd be surprised. A lot of people that have knowledge are willing to share it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, ask the questions. Worst they can say is no. Yeah. Right? And so that's it for me, man. Like, I'm just, talking to everybody I know and the people that they know, and I'm just like, hey, you know what? Value's there. If you want to learn some things, come along with me. If now's not the time, no big deal. But just know that I'm here if you have the questions.
I love it. Where can people connect with you, link up with you, work with you, learn from you? Lay it all out, red carpet.
This is, it's not often I get to say this, but I mean, if you Google my name, I'll come up pretty much. If you're in Sudbury.
Let's go.
You can find me there. Zack_ the Good Realtor on Instagram. I post, a lot of different things there. Some, post a lot of funny stuff there, just about staying top of mind. And then, otherwise, I mean, I guess my phone. Well, you can find it. You Google me. Pretty much, my Instagram is the go-to. Zack_ the Good Realtor. All my information's there, and like I said, you get to follow my hijinks every day.
I love it. Do you have anything you want to conclude on, or any final message you want to say?
Don't be afraid to take risks. I think it's so cliche, I know, but like my own experience was I dropped out of school and I bet on myself, right? I had guidance and I had resources, but I still took the leap of faith, right? And went off the beaten path. So don't be afraid of that. And it's so cliche, but just, you're in control of your own destiny, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm in a profession now that everything that I put into it is what I get out.
For sure.
Right. And I've had to make a lot of sacrifices, a lot of compromises. So, just make it happen, man.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you, brother. I really appreciate your time.
Awesome,
Thank
man.
you so much. That's yeah, man. That's it.
Sweet, dude.